Commander Elena Reyes pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the underground bunker, listening to the rhythmic hum of Kraxan patrol ships passing overhead. The Resistance's main base, hidden deep within the Andes Mountains, had survived another close call. She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and pushed away from the wall, her boots silent on the metal floor as she made her way to the command center. The room buzzed with quiet activity as dozens of Resistance members monitored communications and surveillance feeds. The soft blue glow of screens illuminated determined faces, each person focused on their task with the intensity that came from knowing they were humanity's last hope. "Commander," Lieutenant David Kumar called out, his dark eyes bright with excitement despite the exhaustion evident in his posture. "We've detected something unusual in the Kraxan neural network." Elena quickly crossed to his station, leaning over his shoulder to study the scrolling data. After 3 years of occupation, the Resistance had managed to hack into small portions of the aliens' vast communication network, but they'd never found anything truly useful, until now. "Look at these patterns," David said, pointing to a recurring sequence in the data stream. "Dr. Rodriguez thinks it's some kind of synchronization signal. Their entire network depends on it." Elena's pulse quickened. "Get Rodriguez up here. Now." Within minutes, Dr. Isabella Rodriguez, their lead xenotechnologist, burst into the command center, her gray-streaked hair escaping from its usual tight bun. "Commander, this is it, this is what we've been looking for." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up detailed analyses. "The Kraxans operate as a hive mind, but they need this signal to maintain coordination across their empire. Without it, they'd be isolated, confused, vulnerable." Elena studied the data carefully, years of military training before the invasion helping her understand the tactical implications. "Can we disrupt it?" Isabella's expression tightened. "Maybe. But we'd need access to one of their main transmission nodes. And those are the most heavily guarded installations on Earth." "Show me the nearest node," Elena ordered. A holographic map materialized above the central table, showing a glowing red dot high in the mountains, less than 100 kilometers from their position. Elena's mind raced with possibilities. The location was remote, difficult to access, which meant fewer guards than nodes in populated areas. "David, get me everything we have on the security patterns at that installation." "Isabella, I need to know exactly what kind of equipment we'd need to interfere with the signal." She straightened up, addressing the entire command center. "This might be our first real chance to hurt them. Let's not waste it." The next 48 hours were a blur of planning, preparation, and prayer. Elena had selected a small team for the mission, herself, David to handle the technical aspects, and their 2 best scouts, Maya Ortiz and Raj Patel. They'd made the careful journey through the mountains under cover of darkness, using the natural caves and valleys to avoid detection. Now, crouched behind a ridge less than a kilometer from the Kraxan installation, Elena watched through high-powered binoculars as the alien guards made their rounds. The Kraxans were tall, spindly creatures with iridescent skin that shifted colors in the sunlight. Their movements were unnaturally smooth, almost hypnotic, a side effect of their hive mind coordination. 3 guards on the perimeter," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the thin mountain wind. "They're maintaining the same pattern we observed. 8 minutes between rotations." Elena nodded. The Kraxans were efficient, but they were also predictable. Their rigid adherence to patterns was both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. "Raj, what about the inner security?" 2 more inside the main chamber, based on the thermal readings," he reported. "And something big in the center, probably the transmission equipment." "David?" He patted the device in his pack. "Isabella's disruptor is ready. If her calculations are right, it should create enough interference to give us a 30-second window. After that, their backup systems will kick in. 30 seconds to get in, plant the virus, and get out." Elena checked her watch. Not much margin for error. When is there ever? Maya's grim smile reflected the gallows humor they'd all developed over years of resistance. Elena did one final equipment check. They each carried a modified pulse rifle, scrapped together from stolen Kraxan technology, and electromagnetic charges that could temporarily short-circuit alien tech. The real key to their mission was the tiny data crystal David carried, containing a virus designed to corrupt the synchronization signal. "Remember," Elena said, meeting each of their eyes in turn, "if this works, it won't just affect this node. The virus will spread through their entire network. For the first time, we might be able to show them that humanity isn't as defeated as they think." They waited until the sun began to set, the changing light providing extra cover as the guards' color-shifting skin worked against them, creating moments of imperfect camouflage. When the next rotation began, Elena gave the signal. Maya and Raj moved first, silent as shadows as they flanked the nearest guard. The electromagnetic charges did their work, the alien dropping without a sound as its neural systems temporarily overloaded. They repeated the process with mechanical precision, 8 minutes, 3 guards, no alerts. Elena and David approached the entrance, their boots crunching softly on the metallic ground around the installation. David placed Isabella's disruptor against the door's control panel. "Ready?" Elena nodded, pulse rifle raised. "Do it." The device activated with a high-pitched whine that made Elena's teeth ache. The door's locking mechanism sputtered and died. They were in. The interior of the installation was eerily beautiful, with flowing architectural lines that seemed to defy physics. Bioluminescent panels cast everything in a pale purple glow. The 2 interior guards turned at their entrance, but the electromagnetic charges found their marks before the aliens could raise an alarm. "There." David pointed to a crystalline structure in the center of the chamber, pulsing with complex patterns of light. "That's the transmission node." They rushed forward, David pulling out the data crystal. Elena kept watch, every nerve ending tingling with anticipation. This close to the node, she could feel something, a sort of pressure in her mind, the weight of countless alien thoughts passing through the network. "Uploading now," David reported, his fingers dancing across the node's control surface. 20 seconds. Elena heard something, a whisper of movement from the corridor. "Company coming. Hurry." 10 seconds. The door at the far end of the chamber began to open. 5 seconds. Elena raised her rifle. "Done." They ran. Elena fired 2 quick bursts at the opening door, forcing the reinforcements to take cover. They sprinted back the way they came, past the disabled guards, into the gathering darkness. Behind them, alarms began to wail, but it was too late. The virus was uploaded. The first real blow in humanity's fight for freedom had been struck. Hours later, safely back in the Resistance base, Elena stood in the command center watching reports flood in from around the world. The Kraxan network was experiencing unexplained difficulties. Their ships were flying erratically. Their communications were garbled. Their perfectly coordinated actions were showing signs of confusion. "It's working better than we hoped," Isabella said, her voice filled with quiet awe. "The virus isn't just corrupting their coordination signals, it's rewriting them. Every time they try to re-establish the network, it gets worse." Elena thought about all the humans still living under Kraxan control, about the cities transformed into alien hives, about the years of suffering and loss. This was just the beginning, but for the first time, she felt something she hadn't dared to feel in years: hope. "Send word to the other resistance cells," she ordered. "Tell them it's time. The real fight starts now." As the messages went out, Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Kraxans had made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed that humanity's greatest weakness, our individuality, our lack of a hive mind, was what made us inferior. They were about to learn that independence, creativity, and the indomitable human spirit were actually our greatest strengths. The silent watch was over. The time for action had come. Dr. Marcus Patel stared at the oscillating patterns on his laboratory screen, his tired eyes burning from hours of unblinking focus. The underground facility in what used to be the CERN complex had become his home over the past months, as he and his team worked to understand the strange technology they'd recovered from a downed Kraxan ship. Another failure, he muttered, watching the wave patterns collapse into chaos. But something about this failure was different. He leaned closer, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The collapse wasn't random, there was a pattern to the destruction, a mathematical beauty to the way the Kraxan systems broke down. "Alexei," he called out to his research partner. "Come look at this." Dr. Alexei Volkov limped over, his prosthetic leg, a reminder of the initial invasion, whirring softly. The Russian physicist had been working with Marcus since the resistance found them both hiding in the ruins of Geneva. "These harmonics," Alexei said, his accent thickening with excitement. "They're not just disrupting the signal, they're creating a cascading failure in the quantum field." Marcus nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's like their technology has a resonant frequency. Hit it just right, and everything falls apart." Alexei finished. He grabbed his tablet, running calculations. "With the right transmission array, we could extend the effect for kilometers." "Get me Commander Reyes on the comm," Marcus ordered one of the lab technicians. "Tell her we found something." The response from the Andes headquarters was immediate. Within hours, Elena's face appeared on their secure channel, her expression intense. "Talk to me, doctors. What have you found?" Marcus explained their discovery, trying to contain his enthusiasm enough to remain coherent. "Their quantum technology operates on principles we barely understand, but it has a fundamental weakness. Every piece of Kraxan tech resonates at the same frequency, it's how they maintain compatibility across their empire. But that means one signal could disable everything," Elena finished, her eyes widening with understanding. "Exactly. We're calling it the frequency disruptor. It won't permanently destroy their technology, but it can create windows of opportunity, periods where their weapons, their shields, their communication networks are all offline." Elena was silent for a moment, clearly processing the tactical implications. "How long of a window?" 3 minutes, maybe 4 before their systems can reboot and adapt. But during that time, they'll be completely vulnerable. "And you can build this device?" Alexei stepped forward. "We already have a prototype. Small range, but it works. With the right resources, we could construct larger versions, create a network of transmitters." "You'll have whatever you need," Elena promised. "This could be the key we've been waiting for. The virus attack proved they're not invincible. This could prove they're not invincible." Over the next month, resistance cells around the world began receiving mysterious shipments, pieces of equipment, technical blueprints, assembly instructions. Marcus and Alexei worked around the clock, coordinating with engineering teams on every continent to ensure the disruptors would be built correctly. The plan was ambitious, a synchronized global strike, hitting multiple Kraxan strongholds simultaneously while their technology was disabled. Success would require unprecedented coordination between resistance groups that had been operating independently for years. Finally, the day arrived. Marcus stood in the CERN control room, watching status updates appear on the main screen as resistance cells reported in. Green lights flickered on, one by one, representing disruptor stations ready for activation. 60 seconds to synchronization, Alexei announced, his voice tight with tension. 59, 58. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the day the Kraxans arrived. The massive ships appearing in the sky. The initial attempts at peaceful contact. The moment it all went wrong. He thought of his family, lost in those first chaotic days, and silently promised them that their deaths would not be in vain. 10 seconds, Alexei called out. 9, 8. Around the world, resistance fighters moved into position. In New York's underground tunnels, in the ruins of Tokyo, in hidden bases beneath the Amazon rainforest, humanity prepared to strike back. 3, 2, 1. Marcus slammed his hand down on the activation control. The disruptor network hummed to life, broadcasting its carefully tuned frequency across the globe. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the reports started flooding in. London reporting, Kraxan defenses are down. Beijing confirms, their ships are dropping from the sky. Sydney base, we have multiple targets offline. On the main screen, they watched as Kraxan systems worldwide went dark. Their mighty ships, usually hovering ominously over major cities, dropped to emergency power and landed clumsily. Their automated defense systems fell silent. Their ever-present surveillance networks went blind. And humanity struck back. In every occupied city, resistance fighters emerged from hiding. They attacked Kraxan installations with conventional weapons, guns, explosives, even improvised devices that would normally be useless against alien shields. For precious minutes, the invincible conquerors were defenseless. 2 minutes remaining, Alexei announced. They'll be trying to adapt. Marcus watched the countdown timer, knowing their window of opportunity was closing. But they'd already achieved more than he'd dared to hope. Across the world, Kraxan facilities were burning. Their carefully maintained order had been shattered. 30 seconds. The resistance teams began their rehearsed withdrawals, disappearing back into hidden bases and secret tunnels before the aliens could restore their systems. They took with them captured technology, valuable data, and most importantly, proof that the Kraxans could be hurt. When the disruptor effect faded and alien systems came back online, the damage was done. Humanity had launched its first coordinated offensive, and it had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. In the aftermath, Marcus and Alexei worked feverishly to analyze the data from the attack. The Kraxans would adapt, would find ways to shield against the disruptor frequency, but that would take time and resources. More importantly, they'd have to fundamentally alter their technology, sacrificing efficiency and compatibility for security. We've forced them to change, Marcus told Elena during their next communication. For the first time, they have to adapt to us instead of the other way around. Elena's response was grim but satisfied. Good. But this is just the beginning. We've shown them we can hurt them, now we need to show them we can beat them. As Marcus ended the transmission, he noticed his hands were shaking. Not from fear, he realized, but from excitement. The impossible suddenly seemed possible. Humanity had spent years learning to survive under Kraxan rule. Now, finally, they were learning how to fight back. The chains were beginning to break. The real war was about to begin. Dr. James Winters noticed the headaches first. Subtle, persistent, intensifying whenever the Kraxan patrols passed overhead. As the Resistance's lead psychologist, he'd been documenting mental health patterns among survivors, but this was different. The timing was too precise, the symptoms too widespread. Working from his makeshift office in the Montreal underground facility, James began mapping incident reports against Kraxan patrol patterns. The correlation was undeniable, but the implications were terrifying. "They're in our heads," he explained to the emergency council meeting, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "The headaches, the confusion, the periodic waves of despair, it's not just trauma. The Kraxans are actively suppressing our cognitive functions." Commander Elena Reyes leaned forward, her face grim on the secure video feed. "How?" "They're telepathic," James replied. "But not like in science fiction. They're broadcasting specific frequencies that interfere with human brain activity. It's subtle, almost undetectable unless you know what to look for." "That explains a lot," Dr. Marcus Patel interjected from his CERN facility. The passive acceptance of their rule, the difficulty organizing resistance. Exactly, James nodded. But here's the interesting part, some people are naturally resistant. And others can develop immunity through specific mental training. That got everyone's attention. Elena's eyes narrowed. What kind of training? James pulled up his research data. It's based on meditation techniques, but modified. We need to strengthen certain neural pathways, create mental shields against their influence. I've been working with a test group, and the results are promising. How long to implement on a larger scale? That's the challenge. Individual training takes weeks. But James paused, considering his next words carefully. I think we can create a sort of psychic vaccine. A way to rapidly induce the necessary neural patterns using modified Kraxan technology. The council erupted in debate. Using alien tech on human minds was risky, but the potential benefits were enormous. Eventually, Elena called for order. Dr. Winters, you have 1 month to develop a safe prototype. If it works, we'll need to distribute it globally. The next 4 weeks were a blur of experiments, setbacks, and breakthroughs. James worked with Marcus and Alexei, combining their understanding of Kraxan technology with his knowledge of human psychology. The result was the Neural Shield, a device that could temporarily block alien telepathic influence while helping the brain develop natural resistance. The first mass test was conducted in Montreal. 5,000 resistance members and civilian allies volunteered. James monitored their vital signs as the shield activated, ready to shut everything down at the first sign of danger. Neural pattern stabilizing, his assistant reported. Brainwave activity showing increased coherence, they're breaking through the Kraxan suppression. The effect was remarkable. People straightened up, their eyes clearing as if waking from a long dream. Confusion turned to anger as they realized how they'd been manipulated. Keep monitoring them, James ordered. We need to make sure the resistance is permanent. Over the next week, the test subjects maintained their immunity even after the shield was deactivated. More importantly, they could now sense the Kraxan telepathic broadcasts, understanding them as the weapons they truly were. Elena authorized full deployment. Resistance cells began producing neural shields, distributing them through underground networks. Each person freed became another carrier of the truth, helping others break free from alien control. The Kraxans noticed. Their telepathic broadcasts intensified, becoming crude and obvious in their desperation to maintain control. But it was too late. Humanity was awakening, and with consciousness came rage. James watched from his office as the revolution spread. Cities erupted in protest. Kraxan collaborators found themselves unable to justify their actions. The carefully maintained facade of peaceful occupation crumbled. We're approaching critical mass, he reported to Elena. Their telepathic suppression relied on subtlety. Now that people can sense it, their influence is backfiring. Every attempt to reassert control just makes humans more resistant. Good, Elena replied. Because we're detecting massive energy buildups in their primary installations. They're preparing something big. James nodded grimly. They're realizing that physical weapons might be their only option now. But they've lost their greatest advantage, our own minds are no longer their allies. The Kraxans had made a fundamental mistake in their approach to conquering Earth. They'd assumed that human consciousness was primitive, easily manipulated. They hadn't understood that the very individuality they sought to suppress was what made human minds so adaptable, so resistant to control once awakened. As James prepared his next report, an alert flashed across his screen. Kraxan ships were launching worldwide, abandoning their ground installations. The aliens were consolidating their forces, preparing for what would likely be their final attempt to maintain control. The mind war was won. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. Maria Torres, former UN communications director turned resistance strategist, stood before the array of broadcasting equipment in the Resistance's Mexico City bunker. Their hijacked satellite network was ready. The truth about Kraxan manipulation needed to reach everyone, even those still under alien influence. Global Broadcast Network Synchronized, her technical chief, Aidan O'Connor, reported. "We've got coverage across all remaining human frequencies, plus we're piggybacking on Kraxan channels." Maria took a deep breath. "Begin transmission." The message they'd prepared was simple but powerful: footage of Kraxan telepathic suppression techniques, documentation of their manipulation, and most importantly, proof of humanity's successful resistance. They included Dr. Winter's neural shielding specifications, allowing people to create makeshift protective devices from common electronics. "First responses coming in," Aidan announced. "Southeast Asia, Europe, North America, they're receiving us clearly." The effect was electric. As people began breaking free from Kraxan control, decades-old conflicts suddenly seemed meaningless. Ancient enemies found common ground in their shared oppression and newfound freedom. In the Korean peninsula, the long-divided nation reunified almost overnight, turning their combined industrial might toward producing neural shields and resistance technology. The Middle East's warring factions laid down arms against each other, focusing their resources on alien targets. Even long-standing religious and ideological differences faded in the face of the true enemy. "Commander Reyes," Maria reported, "Phase 1 is complete. Global awareness has reached critical levels." Elena's response was immediate. "Good. Initiate Phase 2. Maria nodded to her team. The second broadcast began, a coordinated battle plan for the entire planet. The Resistance had spent months preparing this strategy, identifying key Kraxan installations and coordinating military resources across every continent. Former military leaders from dozens of nations contributed their expertise. Chinese generals coordinated with American admirals. Israeli tactical experts worked alongside their Palestinian counterparts. The remaining armed forces of every country merged into a unified Earth defense force. The Kraxans responded with desperate aggression. Their ships launched massive bombardments, but humanity was ready. The neural shield network, combined with Dr. Patel's frequency disruptors, created gaps in their attacks. Underground bases and bunkers, built during centuries of human conflict, now served as shelter for the unified resistance. Maria worked tirelessly, coordinating communications between resistance cells worldwide. The broadcasts continued, tactical updates, technical specifications, evacuation routes. Humanity's greatest strength, our ability to adapt and share information, was turned into a weapon. "They're falling back," Aidan reported, tracking Kraxan ship movements. "Consolidating around their primary installations." Maria studied the global tactical display. The aliens were abandoning their scattered outposts, gathering their forces for what would likely be a final, devastating assault. But they'd lost their greatest advantage, humanity's division. In the command center, Maria received reports from around the world. African nations pooling their resources to mass-produce neural shields. South American resistance cells sharing advanced guerrilla tactics. European scientific institutes collaborating on weapons development. Asian manufacturing centers running at full capacity to arm the resistance. The Kraxans had made a critical error in their strategy. By attempting to suppress human consciousness, they'd given humanity a common enemy, a shared trauma to overcome. Now, freed from their influence, Earth's population was more unified than ever before. New Kraxan energy signatures detected, Aidan warned. Massive power buildup in their primary installations. Maria immediately alerted the Global Command Network. The aliens were preparing something big, perhaps their final attempt to maintain control. But humanity was no longer the scattered, easily manipulated species they'd conquered years ago. "All sectors, prepare for maximum engagement," she broadcasted. "This is what we've trained for. Remember, we are stronger together." The response was immediate and overwhelming. From every corner of the planet, humanity signaled their readiness. Ancient rivalries and borders had disappeared, replaced by a single, unified purpose: survival. As the Kraxan ships gathered in the sky, Maria sent one final broadcast. "For too long, they used our divisions against us. They thought our diversity was weakness, our individuality a flaw. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, humanity stands as one." The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and for the first time, humans would face it not as separate nations or factions, but as a single, united species. The sky burned. Thousands of Kraxan ships hung over Earth's major cities, their hulls glowing with accumulated energy. Commander Elena Reyes stood in the Global Command Center, now relocated to the depths of the Rocky Mountains, watching as humanity prepared for its final stand. "All defense systems ready," Marcus reported from CERN. "Frequency disruptors at maximum charge. Neural shield network at full strength," James added from Montreal. "No sign of telepathic breakthrough. Global forces in position," Maria confirmed from Mexico City. "Waiting for your command." Elena studied the tactical displays. The Kraxans had gathered nearly their entire fleet, a desperate gamble that would either crush human resistance once and for all or leave them vulnerable to a coordinated counterattack. "Begin Operation Dawn," Elena ordered. "All units, execute on my mark." The plan they developed was audacious. While the Kraxans prepared their massive energy weapon, humanity would strike first with everything they had. The neural shield network would protect against telepathic attacks while frequency disruptors targeted their technology. Meanwhile, ground forces would assault their primary installations, aiming to destroy their power generation capabilities. Energy buildup in Kraxan ships reaching critical levels, Marcus warned. "They're about to fire. Now!" Elena commanded. Across the planet, thousands of frequency disruptors activated simultaneously. The air itself seemed to vibrate as waves of quantum interference swept upward. Kraxan ships stuttered in their attack sequence, their carefully accumulated energy dispersing harmlessly into the atmosphere. But the aliens had adapted. Their ships quickly began adjusting, compensating for the disruption. "Second phase," Elena ordered. "Hit them with everything." Ground-based weapons opened fire. Missiles launched from hidden silos. Electromagnetic pulse generators, reverse-engineered from Kraxan technology, sent waves of destructive energy skyward. The aliens' shields flickered and failed under the assault. "They're launching ground forces," Maria reported. "Massive deployment of combat units." This was the moment they'd prepared for. As Kraxan troops descended, they found themselves facing not scattered resistance cells but a unified human army. Years of occupation had turned Earth's population into hardened warriors, and now they fought with coordination and purpose. In New York, resistance fighters emerged from the subway tunnels, armed with captured alien weapons. In Shanghai, modified industrial robots engaged Kraxan ground forces. In Cairo, solar-powered electromagnetic cannons targeted their dropships. "Their command network is fragmenting," James reported. "The neural shield is causing chaos in their hive mind. They can't coordinate effectively." Elena watched as the battle unfolded across every continent. The Kraxans had expected to face a broken, divided species. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had turned their own weapons and tactics against them. "Commander." Marcus's voice was urgent. "We're detecting a massive power surge in their primary installations. They're attempting something." The tactical display showed it clearly. Every Kraxan facility on Earth was channeling energy upward, creating a web of destructive force that would envelope the planet. "This is it," Elena realized. "Their final option. If they can't control Earth, they'll try to destroy it. But humanity had prepared for this too. As the alien energy web began to form, hidden quantum resonators activated in every major city. The technology, developed by Marcus and his team, was designed to create a feedback loop in the Kraxen's own energy network. Resonators at full power, Marcus confirmed. The feedback is building. The effect was catastrophic, for the Kraxens. Their energy web collapsed inward, the destructive force they'd meant to unleash on Earth instead cascading through their own networks. Ships began falling from the sky as their power systems overloaded. Ground forces, move in. Elena ordered. Secure those installations. The next hours were chaos, but organized chaos. Human forces methodically captured or destroyed every Kraxen facility. The aliens, cut off from their hive mind and with their technology failing, fought desperately but without coordination. As dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, Elena received the reports she'd been waiting for. City after city, region after region reported victory. The Kraxen forces were surrendering or retreating. Their mighty ships, the symbols of their dominion over Earth, were either destroyed or fleeing into space. Launch the satellites, Elena commanded. The Resistance had prepared a network of defensive satellites, ready to prevent any future invasion attempts. As they moved into position, she allowed herself to feel what she'd been holding back: hope, pride, and overwhelming relief. "Commander," Maria's voice was thick with emotion. "It's over. We've won." Elena looked at the tactical display one last time. Where there had once been Kraxen strongholds, human cities were beginning to emerge from hiding. The neural shield network had protected not just their minds but their spirit, allowing humanity to unite and fight back. "No," Elena replied, thinking of all they'd learned, all they'd overcome. "It's not over. It's just beginning." She turned to face her staff, seeing in their eyes the same determination that had carried them through the darkness of occupation to this moment of triumph. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Operation Dawn is complete. Earth is free." As celebrations erupted across the planet, Elena knew that humanity would never be the same. The Kraxens had tried to conquer them through division and mental suppression, but in doing so, they'd forced humanity to discover its greatest strength, the power of unity, the indomitable spirit that could overcome any obstacle when people worked together. The Great Rebellion was over. The dawn of a new era had begun.